So here it is, guys, the moment you've all been waiting for, the season finale, week 4 of The Good Fight, taken by our very own Mark Pomeroy.
Well, hey there, Elevate friends and family. Great to have you with us today for the 4th and final week of our series, The Good Fight. And we've taken this title from something that Paul, heavyweight in the early church, wrote to one of the younger leaders that he'd been mentoring, a guy named Timothy. And it turns out Paul was actually anticipating he was soon about to die. So this was sort of like some of his last words to Timothy, which we have a record of today, where in that letter that he wrote, he made this kind of confident declaration that looking back over his life as a Jesus follower, or for the time that he was a Jesus follower, he was able to declare that I've fought the good fight, I've finished the race, I've remained faithful. And we've really put this out as an aspirational goal. You know, this idea that following Jesus, it's not always easy. It's very much a fight a lot of the time, but it's a good fight. It's a vital fight. And my observation is not everyone actually fights the fight, or not everyone finishes fighting the good fight. Some people tap out if it gets too hard, if they get a bit tired, if it becomes a little bit inconvenient, other priorities step ahead of following Jesus and living out his purpose. But if we can remain faithful, fighting the good fight, finishing the race, then we will get to hear the sweetest words you'll ever get to hear, that when we meet Jesus, he will say to us, well done, good and faithful servant. So we talked about in week 1 the importance of fighting for your heart, that out of our heart controls the direction of our life. Second week, fighting for our purpose, that we're here designed on purpose for a purpose, and that both finding and fulfilling our purpose is very core to the idea of fighting the good fight. And then last week we talked about fighting for your mind, that as we continually, can get damaged and thinking thoughts that are less than God's best, those things will actually help minimize or limit us living out God's purpose. So look, I thoroughly recommend, strongly recommend, either go back and watch those messages if you missed any of them on this platform, or if it's more convenient, take us with you on a podcast and listen to any of them. You just go to your favorite podcast app or our Elevate Church AU app, and you just search for Elevate Church Perth. We'll be there. You'll find us, and you can listen to them. Now, today in the 4th and final week of this series, I want to talk about fighting for your health. Now, it might be easy and simple just to tell everyone, okay, eat less, move more, see you next week, which is not actually wrong advice, but it's also probably not breaking news. And I want to just take a kind of different angle on this topic of fighting for your health. Now, in peak lockdown in Australia, Melbourne, the capital city of Victoria, was actually the most locked down city in the world. Their lockdown went on forever. And I'm part of a teaching team of a church in Melbourne, Gateway Church, and they were covering off at this sort of peak lockdown. They were covering a series on the 7 deadly sins. And for some reason, they kind of threw it to me to teach on gluttony. Yeah, real popular topic, that one. Not only that, I heard rumors that some of the church there was sort of campaigning to the teaching team, hey, listen, please don't talk about gluttony. I mean, we've had so much taken from us. Don't take our sweet treats away as well. So when I taught on that subject, I said right at the top, one of my stated goals is at the end of this message is that hopefully we can still be friends. So echoing that exact same sentiment that I shared with Gateway when I taught on gluttony, I'm teaching today on health, And one of my stated goals is at the end of this, please hang around, that we will still be friends. Now, just to kind of assure you of a few things, what I'm not going to do in this message is advocate for any particular nutritional approach. I'm not going to try to convince you to run a marathon. I'm not going to focus on the importance of getting your beach body ready for next summer. You know, this message isn't called Fight for Your Six-Pack. It's called Fight for Your Health. So what I actually want to do is I want to zoom in on what God says about our health and how it ties to us finding and fulfilling our God-given purpose. And really the big idea is, just like with week 1, we talked about the reality that if our heart is damaged, it will actually limit us achieving God's purposes. We talked in week 3 about if our mind is off, we're thinking thoughts that are less than God's best, it will limit us fulfilling God's purpose in our life. Well, the reality is that having compromised health will also limit us fulfilling God's purpose in our lives. Now, any millennials out there? Millennials, yes, okay, sure. Did you know that the first wave of millennials are about to turn 40? And you're like, I thought millennials were the young ones. Well, okay, they were, but now they're about to turn 40. Although I find the older I get, the younger 40 sounds. That's just a thing. And chances are you have too. In fact, chances are some of you who are over 40 can maybe look back at when you were a kid and you thought 40 was so old. You know, you met someone who was 40 and you were stunned that they were still alive. Well, there was a book came out called Happy Birthday, You Poor Old Wreck. Within this book, the author compiled some statements from young kids. These kids were asked to imagine what they thought their life was going to be like when they turned 40. So here's Rita, age 9. She's imagining, looking forward. I am 40. I have wrinkles and gray hair, and I would have a walking stick to help me walk. And then Jennifer, aged 8. I am 40. I am turning old. I just left work because I cannot manage going up and down hills. I know I will die soon. 40. I share that because, look, I think in general terms, the fact is that our health goals tend to change or shift or progress as we journey through life. You know, oftentimes in our 20s and 30s, our health goals might have been about having the Instagram-worthy bod that we can take the pics of and put them out there, #Fitspo. Maybe in our 40s and 50s, we're not necessarily putting up the photos on Instagram, but we're thinking, okay, if I can just maintain a good baseline, then I'm doing fine. Maybe in your 60s, you're like, oh, I just want to stop the cheese from sliding off the cracker. Okay, and then maybe in your 70s, I'm not there yet, but maybe in your 70s, you're just trying to kind of delay the onset of the reality of, you know, waking up in the morning wondering what's stopped working that day. So here's the thing. If you've got your smartphone, how about you scan this flow code? It's going to take you to the first letter that Paul wrote to the church in Corinth. Now, while you're doing that, let me just warn you that what he wrote and what I'm about to read, it's kind of confronting. And you'll soon discover that I'm not about to preach a #Fitspo message, as if to say this message is, like I said earlier, fight for your six-pack, because it's not. So here's what Paul wrote. Don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? You do not belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price, so you must honor God with your body. So just from those couple of sentences, here's two quick and super important takeaways. The first one is, if you're struggling with your self-image about your body, just know that God values your body enough to take up residence in your body. Because look, I know some people associate their body as a source of shame, and I just want to say right up front, you are not a number on a scale. You're not a clothing size. You're not what bullies may have said about you. You are a temple of God's Holy Spirit. In fact, let me just kind of say it a slightly different way. Even if you're not comfortable in your own skin, understand God is comfortable in your skin. And then there's this second big idea that Paul puts out there. Your body does not belong to you. See, one of the big misconceptions is that, well, it's my body, I can do whatever I want. My body, it's my body, I can do it. We teach this exact same principle when it comes to finances, that it's my money, I can do. No, it's not. It's my body, I can do. No, it's not. And if we get this revelation, if we get this clear, if we understand that our body doesn't belong to us, it was bought at a high price, which was Jesus dying on the cross, then we can start to understand, because we're not owners, well, what does that mean? Well, it means we're managers. And it means we have a responsibility to manage our bodies well, to manage them in a way that honors God, who bought them for a high price. Now, Paul did write this part of the letter in relation to sexual practices, and he was talking about, listen, don't go sleeping around with people that you're not married to, because that's not honoring the body that God dwells in. But this principle goes into everything, that we're to honor God with how we manage our bodies and our health. He calls us to a higher standard. So I just want to go super quickly over 3 accessible practices that we can put into practice that will improve our health. Now, we've been saying this every single week in this series. We've been teaching on accessible practices, but they're not automatic practices. We have to be intentional. And it's only if we work these practices into our lives that we'll start to experience the benefits. So, practice number 1 is pace yourself. Because the reality is, in 2024, we live in a culture where you can always be on. You're probably even sometimes expected to always be on. Wake up and hustle, wake up and grind. In fact, not only is it encouraged and expected, it's sometimes celebrated. Oh, how's it going, mate? How are you? Busy? Oh, yeah, I'm busy. You busy? Yeah, I'm so busy. Oh, you busy? Oh, I'm busy. But that's not a kingdom value. I mean, laziness isn't a kingdom value either, but we're not designed to always be on, always be hustling, always be grinding. And I've fallen victim to this in my past. In my 20s and 30s, it was not uncommon for me to work 80 plus hours a week. And I think I probably wore that as a badge of honor at the time. The problem is that it had very negative health implications for me. I became a chronic insomniac, and I mean chronic insomniac. It started to impact my mental health, and I started to find myself acting toxically towards some colleagues and friends and family members. And I had to come to the realization that we are not designed to rev at maximum RPMs all day, every day, 7 days a week. That we need to pace ourselves, and if we don't, it'll catch up. It just will. It might not be tomorrow, but it'll catch up with you. So number one, pace yourself. Number two, seek healing. Now, when we talk about seek healing, if you break your arm, you go to the hospital and they put it back together. If you've been emotionally hurt, damaged, hopefully you might go and seek some professional assistance, some counseling. The same thing even in the mental health space. Seek some professional help, because we understand the connection between physical damage, emotional damage, mental damage. But there's another connection that we potentially overlook sometimes. There's a book that was written by a medical doctor. It was kind of like collection of a bunch of research, and the book's called The Body Keeps the Score. And the author makes the point that the research indicates or confirms that any of these mentally damaging and emotionally damaging and stress and worry and anxiety, any of those sorts of things that plague us or that have happened to us, actually impact our physical health, that the body keeps the score, that every one of these things, these events, these seasons, these circumstances, actually has a negative impact on our bodies, our physical health. I'll give you an extreme example. About 20 years ago, one of our good friends, very successful business person, married, two young kiddos, started to be actually attacked by some close family members who were trying to steal his businesses and finances, and there was court cases, and it was just nonstop. And this particular friend of ours was sleeping like 1 hour a night maximum. And this went on for a long time, like a long time. And then one day, his wife contacted us and to let us know that our friend, who was just around the age of 50, said he just died. Which was shocking, because he didn't actually have any physical issues. There weren't any heart issues. There wasn't any sort of medical issues. His body just stopped functioning, and he died because of this ongoing stress and worry and anxiety and mental and emotional trauma that he'd been experiencing. The body keeps the score. So I want to just please listen to that, understand that, make that connection. And when you make that connection, open yourself up to God's mercy and God's forgiveness. Allow God to heal and restore your mind. Allow God to heal and restore your heart. And know that it will have a positive effect on your body, and that therefore you will likely live longer and have a greater quality of life from this day forward that will allow you to fulfill God's purposes for your life more effectively. All right, here's the final one, and I save this for last. Please don't tune out. Don't, throw stuff at the screen that you're viewing. It's this one: exercise consistently. Yeah, I know. You saw it coming. It's like, yeah, okay, I know. We know exercise. We know, I know. And you could say to me, look, the Bible says nothing about the importance of exercising consistently. You won't find a verse in the Bible or a story from Jesus talking about the benefits of CrossFit. You won't find any of Solomon's wise proverbs encouraging you to limit your carb intake. And all of that's true. And it's not a coincidence, because the reality is that the words that we now have in the Bible were written by people who lived in a culture where they were always moving. They weren't having to go to the gym to lift weights. They were lifting heavy things. They weren't having to wear a watch with a move alert function, because they were always on the move and they were getting their steps in naturally. They weren't having to follow any sort of nutritional approach or have some prescribed dietary regimen, because they were eating seasonally, locally, and they were eating foods that didn't come out of a factory. There's a clue. And here we are in 2024, where it's not uncommon for a reasonably typical day to involve getting out of your bed, moving to the car or the bus, from the vehicle to your desk, from your desk back to the vehicle, from your vehicle to the dining table, from your dining table to the couch, and from the couch back to bed. Not much movement. That's not a very far-fetched reality. And I'm not judging anybody, but understand that movement is a gift. In fact, it's kind of the ultimate embodiment of the axiom, move it or lose it. If we don't consistently move our bodies, we will sooner than God intended lose maximum effective function. So look, I said it right up front. I'm not here to tell you to go to the gym 5-6 days a week. I'm not here to tell you to go train to run a marathon. But just this notion of moving and exercising consistently as a way to honor God with our bodies, and ultimately as a way to live longer quantity of life and live better quality of life, so that we can be here for our kids, be here, and not just here, but functioning for our grandkids, and most importantly, that we can be functioning effectively to do the purpose that God has called us to do. Okay, if you're still here at this point of the message, you got through it, and I hope we're still friends. Next week, we're launching a brand new series called Who Do You Think You Are? And it really points to this idea that as we get clearer in who God calls us to be, we can be even clearer in what God calls us to do. So I would love to have you back here next week as we launch that series. Encourage you to bring somebody, share this with them. Hey, join in wherever you are, anywhere in the world, and let's grow together. See you then.